Tuba Javed and Mr. Yunus Farid for a knowledgeable discussion on learners' autonomy in the post-COVID era and highlighting the role of teachers in making the learners autonomous and creative. Thanks once again. Now I would like to invite the keynote speaker, Dr. Waleed Shauki. Dr. Waleed Shauki was awarded an MA degree in TESOL from the University of Edinburgh, UK, and in teacher training from the University of Helwan, 6th of October University in Cairo. He is also a Delta holder. He has a large experience teaching and heading professional development programs at several universities in the Middle East and North Africa, such as the American University in Cairo, King Abdul Aziz University in Saudi Arabia, and modern colleges of business and science in Oman. He also worked as an education consultant for Cambridge University Press, where he provided training to numerous education institutions around MENA area. He is interested in teacher training, speaking language acquisition, and language pedagogy. He will give presentation on empowering the exhausted horse, learner autonomy in ESL and EFL classrooms. Over to you, sir.
Thanks very much, my dear. I think I'm audible. Can you hear my voice? Is it clear?
Yes, your voice is clear.
Okay, thanks very much. First of all, I'd like to pay a special thank you for this generous invitation to be part of this interesting event. And I would like to also give a special thank you to Ms. Sandrine and all the organizers of the event. The panel discussion that has been shedding the light on my topic today, learner autonomy, they have actually provided lots of insights that we are going to get deeper into the topic very soon. So I'm really sorry actually to start late because I was supposed to start like almost 40 minutes before now. The panel discussion has taken a little bit longer, but thank you for their discussion because they've also discussed a lot of the points that are going to be mentioned in more detail in my session. The session, as you can see here, is entitled Empowering the Exhausted Horse. I mean, we can see that our students are exhausted with the amount of material they are provided with in schools. They not only study English. We as English language teachers focus only on our subjects, but we don't see how students our students are bombarded with other materials and our subjects that they need to do homework, they need to provide feedback, they need to take notes, they need to do exams, and there are loads of other stuff that we may not be aware of that go on in other different classes and sections or departments of the same college or university. So here we are trying to find some ways for our students to empower them to do things outside the classroom through learner autonomy in and outside, of course, the classroom. So these are the session outlines. I'm going to start with asking some few questions to help teachers think about their position, their students' positions, and the need for autonomous learning for their students in their classrooms and outside, and how would this benefit them. Then we are going to see the different definitions of autonomous learners, autonomous learning provided by different research papers, and what's the focus of each one of them. The next point is a program which has been developed by David Noonan. It's a 9-step program in providing teachers and learners with step-by-step guidelines towards empowering students with autonomy. The next point is the teacher's role in in learner autonomy. What do we expect from teachers to do? And again, also from students, what are the different types of activities that we can provide to support the process? And then finally, a very important question is the possibility of assessing autonomy. Some teachers might think, yeah, we should, and other people, and I'm going to show this from different points of view in the research. Okay, so the first point we need to look at is, if you can look at the picture here, a man is pointing his gun towards his horse and asked it. I said, drink. So do you agree with this proverb? First, I would like teachers to share their insights in this session, because We are here not to make it like a trainer-centered session. Your insights are very important. So please try to share your ideas and answer any questions that I ask in the chat box. So would you agree with this proverb, with the saying that says, you can lead the horse to water, but you cannot make it drink? Would you agree with this statement? Please write your answers on the chat box. Ms. Salma says no, she disagrees. So you can force it to drink, Ms. Salma, right? Okay, yeah. Ms. Anwar says agree. Thanks, Ms. Anwar. Other people, yes, 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 agree. Well, I can see only one person who might disagree with the idea. It depends on what you want them to drink. Yeah, I do agree, Mr. Nizar. Mrs. Matt says yes, she agrees with that. Okay, perfect. So we know that we can create, a perfect atmosphere for our students to study. We can force our students to come to the classroom. We can impose a strategy of a 25% absence. If students miss them, they will not be eligible to go to the final exam. But yes, we force the students to come to the class. They sit, they have to be obedient, they have to do homework, they have to do some assignments, but do they have to learn? This is the question. We can do everything in our classrooms, but how can you guarantee that learning is going on within your students' minds? This is, I would say, very much be related to independent learning. We can also see Mr. Galileo, who says that we cannot teach people anything. We can only help them discover it within themselves. So in language teaching, we can provide all the necessary circumstances, all the input that we believe our students need to learn the language, but learning can only happen if the learners are willing to learn and they are ready to contribute and participate in the session. So getting our students to move to this part, to be able to participate willingly in a session is the most important. It's not just in our session. I mean, we are talking about helping them become independent learners in general, in and outside classroom. Another important question is here. Do you think that our students spend enough time to learn a second language? Could you please give your answers? Do you think that your students spend enough time to learn the language? Please say yes or no. Mr. Walid says no. Ms. Aya said no. Okay. Yes, but we have to make them learn. Again, have to make them, Ms. Samreen. We have to encourage them. Ms. Asma Elisa says no because of high exposure of first language. Okay, yeah, I would agree with you, Ms. Elisa. Students, do not have the opportunity to practice language outside the classroom. So all what we need to do is to provide them with much input and practice as much as possible in the classroom. They need to spend more time to learn on their own, Mr. Walid. Yes, exactly. They are not motivated enough, Mrs. Matt says. It depends on the situation. Ms. Isaac says no, they have other subjects as well. Yeah, I do agree with you. The matter of how much they learn out, not in. Exactly, Ms. Almar. This is a very important point to consider. Nizar says, but not always in the classroom. Yes, I do agree with you, Mr. Nizar. Not always in the classroom. We have some time to give to our students in the classroom. But again, look at the number of students that you have in your class. You have maybe in most institutions, in Asia and in Africa, which is where I'm from, is also like 25 students in each class. And if you divide the time that you spend in your session or in your class among your students, each student wouldn't get more than 5 to 10 minutes a day, which is not enough at all. Because of lack of motivation, Ms. Ariba says no, because of lack of motivation and also lack of resource. and proper guidance. Yeah, I do agree with most of what you said. Noonan also commented on this, saying that not everything can be taught in the classroom, because there are so many things that our students can learn outside the classrooms. Our students can learn from different resources, such as the internet, such as even the labels that they can read in any product that they buy. From the names of hotels, from signs, from their colleagues, from songs that they like to listen to. All these areas are very important. And by the way, if it's more interesting to the student than what you give in the classroom, they will learn better outside the classroom than they do inside. So you can provide all the grammar and all the necessary information in the classroom, but one simple sentence that students like outside the classroom could make the difference. Even if it could, Cottrell also mentioned that even if we could provide all the necessary information to our students inside the classroom, a teacher will not always be there when students wish to use the language in real life. So outside the classroom, we're not always there. We don't have the opportunity to give feedback on what happens in real life outside our classrooms. We are not there to correct our students' grammar. We're not there to correct their structure or provide them with the vocabulary they need. Students need to be researchers. They need to search for the knowledge themselves. Okay, so what do you usually complain about in your class? Do you usually complain about your students' level of achievement? I have some points here that some of the teachers mentioned. They sometimes say that students are lazy. They never do homework. They never remember anything I teach them in the classroom. We did the present perfect yesterday, but today all my students, or almost all my students, did it wrong. I tell them to study hard, but they don't care. I will have to give, them more tests or more activities, or, have to repeat lessons again. So do you have these kinds of complaints from your students? Do you think that your students also have similar problems to those teachers? They are lazy, they don't do homework. You explain something today, and the next day you ask questions, and then you find out that your students are not able to answer the questions. Does this happen in your classroom? Hello, I don't see any response. Yeah, Mr. Walid says, yes, some of them do. Well, I would like to ask or to follow up with another question, Mr. Walid and Ms. Nilam. Do you think, have you ever, thought of the reasons behind this? So my students were able to answer the questions correctly in the classroom, but the next day, they were not able to give the same response. Why? What happened? We make them learn English, but we must make them use English. Thank you very much, Mr. Muhammad. Very good idea. Lack of intrinsic motivation, Dr. Walid, I do agree. Yeah, lack of motivation, Ms. Anwar. Okay, so we provide the input. We make sure that our students learn, but because of students are not motivated enough, they may not be concentrating enough in the session. Our students are looking at us. They are following what we are saying. They are reading. They use the language, they learn it today in the real life outside the classroom. Do they have the opportunity to practice this outside the classroom and then come the next day with minds that are ready to contribute and give similar answers to what they did yesterday? This is another important question that we need to think about and make sure that our students have enough opportunity to practice the language outside. So can your students make the choice to improve their own learning? Do you think your students are able to take decisions regarding their own learning process? What do you think? Can you think of an answer to this question? Do you think your students can take decisions regarding their own learning? Yeah. No, no, maybe. Aisha says maybe. Walid says they need guidance. Yeah, some people say no. Well, based on what is your answer? So we say that no, our students are not. Ms. Salma says, to quote Khalil Gibran, wise teachers facilitate metacognition of the students. Thank you very much, Ms. Salma. That's very right. Very true. Yes, they do make choice. Yeah. I believe that in any level and at any time, your students can. Thank you, Ms. Saba. They can, yes. They can take decisions. Our students are able to take responsibility of their own learning. The choice and freedom, as suggested by research, are major issues in the 21st century learning process. And I remember that this was also mentioned in the panel discussion. So students who can choose the way they learn, the words they need, and the topics they choose learn more effectively than the ones who are told to do so. Our students who are able to take decisions are more responsible towards their own learning process. You know, the problem for the teacher is the ability to provide these different types of choices to the learners. So creating this kind of architectural frame to your students to be able to give them enough options to choose from, I think is the biggest challenge that most teachers are facing. So responsibility, okay, what makes our students responsible? Yeah, Mr. Muhammad, I do agree with your point. We make them rote learners, spoon feed them so we don't make them independent learners. I totally agree, yeah. The way we teach in our classrooms, we tend to do everything in the class. So what makes a responsible learner? How can we make our students responsible? As that says motivation, yeah, you're right. If your students are motivated, they will be more responsible towards their learning process. What else? What makes them responsible? Making them think critically. Yeah, thanks very much. Assignments and presentations, freedom to show creativity. Yes, this is what I need from you. I'm not here to provide the information, by the way. I'm here to learn from you guys. So it's very important to share your ideas. I know that you guys have great ideas that we can all learn from each other. So please keep providing us with this, you know, interesting and fruitful insights that we can all learn from. The aim of, you know, any conference or any, you know, teaching context is to exchange experience, resilience. Thanks very much. Yeah, trust their qualifications, their interest. Yeah, I do agree with this. The awareness of their conscience, exactly. Giving them freedom to voice their perceptions. Wow, Ms. Aliza, this is a very good point that we are going to mention soon, inshallah. Okay, so these are some different types of questions. So is it the student who does his homework and follow instructions? Is he the good team worker? Is he the diligent and obedient one? So which of these could be, you know, our responsible learner? In fact, they are not the model ones. They are the learners who accept the idea that their own effort is crucial to progress in learning. So students or the responsible learners are not the ones who do the homework regularly, who always participate in team and group work, who are not always obedient and listen to whatever the teacher says. No, they are the ones who know that their participation in the learning is vital to the learning process. They may not always do their homework, but whenever they fail to do it, they are aware of missing an important opportunity to learn. So they have this kind of what we call it conscious that tells them that I should do this, and because I didn't do it, I missed an important opportunity to learn. Okay. Yeah, so we come now to the the definition of what is autonomous learning. We are going to have a look at the different researchers and writers and what they meant by autonomous learning. Raya Lamb and Vera mentioned in 2007 that autonomous learning is the competence to develop a self-determined, socially responsible, and critically aware participant in and beyond educational environments within a vision of education as interpersonal or personal empowerment and social transformation. So as you can see here, that the central issue is responsibility in learning and participation in the learning process. It actually implies a change in the role of the teacher and the role of the learner. Hollick also mentioned that autonomous learning is the ability to take charge of one's own learning process. This is another definition, but I want you to try to complete the missing words. Okay, so again, your participation is highly appreciated here. What is autonomous learning? Again, in Pakistan, students are not allowed to make choice, be a choice of subject, profession, even making life partners. You know better than I do, Mr. Muhammad, because I've never been to Pakistan, and I really, really appreciate to learn. I have loads and loads of, mashallah, Pakistani friends, but I've never taught there, and the context could be different from the countries where I taught. I taught in Egypt, in UK, in Saudi Arabia, and now in Oman, and I provided training to different institutions in the Middle East. But the most important part is the context that you are working in now, and how would this be applicable in your context. So in this point, I totally agree that your point of view, Mr. Muhammad, is more valid or more important than mine. So what is autonomous learning? It's a what learning in which students take what of their own learning. Can you complete the missing words here? It's a what learning in which students take what of their own learning. Can you complete the missing parts in this definition? What is autonomous learning? I appreciate your participation. So it is it's something that starts with dynamic. Okay, yeah, thanks, Mr. Nizar. A dynamic form of learning. Okay, yeah, I totally agree. There is no one correct answer, by the way, but I'm going to give you what the researcher, what Mr. Hayo mentioned in 2010, as in his definition: take charge of responsibility, a kind of learning that take charge of their own. Very good. Self-directed learning, Ms. Salma, thank you. Yes, it's a self-directed learning where the students, exactly, yeah. So it is actually a self-directed learning in which students take responsibility, Ms. Aya, yes, of their own learning. It takes place what? It takes place where? Thanks, Ms. Samreen and Ms. Aya. It takes place where? Outside the classroom, yeah? And it could take place also inside the classroom. It's not only outside, but the focus here, and most researchers focused on outside the classroom, in students' what? Okay, so it takes place outside the classroom in students' own time. Thanks very much, Mr. Nizar. Yep. So it's a self-directed learning in which students take responsibility of their own learning. It takes place outside the classroom in students' own time. Well, in autonomous learning, the learners what their goal? Learners do what with their goal? They set their goals. Very good. Yes, I would say that everybody agrees. Choose. Yeah, you're right. So they can choose or set, which means the same, their learning or their goals. They what the teaching methods and materials they opt for, they choose, they select. Exactly, yes, they control also the teaching methods and materials. They what their progress. They increase their progress. Okay, yep. What else? They assess. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Nizar. Yeah, they evaluate or assess or analyze. Wow, Ms. Saba, thank you. Or analyze their progress. So they are self-reliant. So do you think that in Pakistan, your students are able to take these decisions? Can they set their own goals? Can they choose their own teaching methods and the materials? We are going to see the possibilities. And I think it's possible. I mean, we cannot say that it is impossible in any context. As responsible teachers, as inexperienced teachers, as what we call it, like action researchers in your classrooms, you need to try different techniques until you reach the point that where you can help your students to take their own decisions. So autonomous learning as a change in the learner. Brona Murphy is actually my tutor in my master's degree at the University of Edinburgh. I really liked her research. She did a research on the kind of training that we need to provide our students to make them autonomous. So she set actually two different types of preparation. The first one is the psychological preparation, and the other one is practical. In psychological preparation, we actually need to make a change in our students' perceptions about what language learning involves. We need to make a change in their expectation that language can only be learned through a teacher or within the limited walls of the classroom. We need to change this thinking, of our students, that learning is not only in here, it only takes place here by this person or under these circumstances. Learning can take place anywhere, depending on where you want to participate. The other part is the practical preparation. So we also need to train our students on different ways to acquire different techniques through which they can enhance their own learning, because our students, yes, we can see some motivated students who are willing to learn the language, but they don't know how. They don't know how to start. I've also, met some of our students who are not even able to type in the correct search words in the research in the search bar in Google, for example. So they type in the wrong words that lead to no answers or to the unexpected answers that we want out of this research. So we need to provide training. And here comes Mr. Noonan's or David Noonan's role. He invented or created or developed this 9-step program to develop learner autonomy in our classroom. The first step in this is to make instructional goals clear for your learners. I think this is a very important point, and our goals are always there in every course book, whatever the course book that you're teaching. The goals are set. You're always being observed by a supervisor or by someone from your institution that often asks you, what are the goals of the session? So these goals are not only for you as a teacher, they need to be made clear for your students. And the reason is to make your students aware of the learning process. I think someone is, using his audio. Could you please turn off your audio, your microphones? Okay, so one thing is to make sure that our students understand what is the goal of this lesson or this unit or this specific session. And towards the end of the session, they also need to evaluate. Yes, thank you, Ms. Kinat. I think this is very important to make sure that your students know the goals and evaluate it by the end. So during this session, the students will be able to see, I was expected to learn how to make positive and negative sentences in the past. And then towards the end of the session, the teacher asks me, are you able to make positive and negative sentences in the past simple? And I think I can't. So that means I missed the goal or the aim of this session. I did not understand. I'm responsible. The teacher did it. Some students got it, some students did not. So the teacher did his part, but my part was absent. I did not do what I'm expected to do. I cannot blame the teacher for this. The goal was there from the beginning. The teacher gave opportunities to learn. He asked questions. He gave explanations. He provided opportunities to practice. And towards the end, I still can't do it. it's then my responsibility. You need to show this to your students. Here is the goal, and towards the end, this is the evaluation of your goal. Can you make it or no? So now you are responsible for your own learning. There are so many simple ways to do this. Setting the goals at the very beginning is easy, but also evaluation at the end is also very important. Like, reviewing what has been learned in questions, very simple questions that you can stick on the board like this. Can you make comparisons? If your goal was to make comparisons, so can you make comparisons? Students would say yes, little, or no. Can you find an example of this? Can you provide an example of this? Can you make plans? Can you find and give examples of this? Can you give evidence? Find or give an example of something. So this is also adapted from Noonan's book. This kind of evaluation is very important towards the end of each session. It shouldn't take more than a minute at the end of your class, but it's very important to tell your students that you missed or you learned something, or you missed a very important opportunity to learn something. So it's just like giving them the awareness that you were here and you did not do your job. Okay. The second step is to allow learners to create their own goals. As mentioned by Mr. Muhammad and some of you who have experienced teaching in Pakistan, they said that it's difficult and it's too challenging to provide opportunities to for our learners to set their own goals. We do not expect our students to change the goal of the institution. Every course has clear goals set at the very beginning of the course. We do not expect students to change these goals. What we need to do is to give them an insight, to give them a voice towards these goals. Okay, here are the general goals. Let's modify these goals towards your own specific needs. And how can we reach these goals together? In some institutions, they hold an action meeting at the beginning of the course. So they get students together. These are the goals of this course, and this is what you are expected to be able to do towards the end of the course. How do you think we can reach there? What are the most interesting topics that you think we can cover to reach these goals? Would you like to watch more videos from the internet? Would you like to read about these specific topics, or these topics will not be very interesting to you? If you have a group of girls, maybe they might be interested or more interested in topics related to fashion or things related to makeup or social media. But if you have a group of boys, they might be more interested in topics related to sports, the World Cup, things like this. So try to find ways to make these goals adaptable to your students' needs. Okay, this action meeting has been suggested by so many institutions and many researchers worldwide, and they found it very effective because now students are responsible. They actually didn't choose the goal, but they chose the way to be directed towards this goal. Okay. It would be very interesting also if you can make your goals SMART. So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely set. Okay. The next step suggested by Noonan is to encourage learners to use second language outside the classroom. As we all agreed at the very beginning that the time we spent in our classes is not enough. So one way is to provide opportunities, and these are some tips on how to do this. So you can ask your students, for example, to keep a diary, write what they learned in the classroom, start a vocabulary book, write words, everywhere in the notebook, on their, their mobile phones, and their social media, post a new vocabulary that they learned today on social media, get other classmates to comment and provide sentences. They can write new sentences using these vocabulary. They can watch movies if they are more interested in movies, talk about it in English, work on their own grammar, like find websites, interesting websites. And again, teachers' role is very important here when it comes to the use of the internet, because many of our students do not know which websites are more useful than others. Read, topics of interest Do not be afraid of making mistakes. Many of our students are shy and they don't want to participate in the class because they think if they said something wrong, other classmates or maybe the teacher may make fun of it, and then they will be in a difficult situation. Try or encourage them to have fun with the language. I believe that there are, these are just some examples, and I'm 100% sure that you have more ideas than the ones provided here. Step 4 is to raise awareness of the learning process. So teachers can provide some learning strategies, such as classifying new words, mind mapping, getting students to work in different projects. The day before, 2 days ago, actually, I was in my class and I was teaching my students the topic of fashion in Unlock, listening and speaking level 3. And it was the end of the day. The session starts late and my students were exhausted because they had a very long day. They had exams during that day and they were not actually motivated at all to participate in the session. Few of them showed up to the session. They were not willing to say or do anything. They were totally exhausted. To get them engaged, I quickly thought of an idea and I asked them, okay, better not to use the course today. The topic is fashion. Okay, we are going to talk about fashion today. Close your books. I showed them from the internet immediately. I searched the internet and I tried to find some pictures, culturally appropriate pictures. Please make sure that this is important. Culturally appropriate pictures that you can use in the classroom of unusual designs of fashion. And I showed them to the students in the class and I told them, okay, gave them the opportunity to comment because that was a listening and speaking class. So give them the opportunity to comment what they liked, what they didn't like, what modifications do they think can be made to any of these styles. And then I asked them to draw their own style, their own fashion that can be sellable to the people in Oman. And you cannot imagine the result. Students were really, really interested in this. All of them grabbed a piece of paper and a pencil and they started drawing. Some of them created very, very interesting drawings and they participated. The idea of drawing was not in my mind, but it just came and I said, okay, let's call for their creativity. Let's get them to do something. And I asked each student to come out in front of the class and explain his design, the colors, the materials, and the price that they're offering their product for. It was very interesting. Everybody participated and they really enjoyed the session. Although at the very beginning it was so boring and they were all extremely tired. So this is just an example of what could be done by a teacher to make your class interesting and to motivate your students towards the learning process. Step 5, as suggested by Noonan, says that helping learners identify their own preferred learning styles and strategies. Many of our students, and unfortunately some teachers, do not teach according or do not use various learning styles, teaching methods in their classrooms. Thank you very much, Mr. Saud. So this is what happens. We need to give our students the opportunity to test their own learning styles. And I would suggest that this should take place at the very early stage of any course. So when students start a new course, there are loads and loads of questionnaires available online that you can send your student that can tell what kind of learners they are, whether they are verbal, visual, musical, kinesthetic, logical, social. So find out your students' learning and make them aware that this is your preferred learning. So when you search for something outside the classroom, you need to focus on this. Do not, if you are a visual learner, or if you are a mathematical or a kinesthetic learner, do not do lots of reading because it may not be of interest to you. And as a teacher, if you discover what is the major or the dominant learning style in your classroom, try to focus on this. If you find out that most of your students are visual, try to focus on using visual aids in your classroom. As I said, loads of these questionnaires are available. They can always be used at any time of your course, but it would be better if you use it at the early stage and make your students aware of their learning style. Okay. The next one is to encourage learners' choice. Yeah. Students can always choose. The choice doesn't have to be the course or the teacher or the class or something vital for the institution, but it can start with very, very simple modes of selections or decision making. Things like, would you like to listen to the text first or read it first? And then see whatever they want and let them do it. So give them some kind of responsibility. Ask each group to choose one part of the reading. Would you like to read, to start with reading 1 or reading 2? Would you like to read paragraph 1 or paragraph 2? Or, okay, this group, you choose the paragraph that you read, and then you choose the next paragraph, and you choose the next paragraph. Then each one should share what they read to the other groups. So in that case, they feel that, yes, I chose this, and it's my responsibility to read it now and present it to the class. Okay. So after your students make the decision towards their own learning, the next step suggested by Noonan is to allow them to generate their own tasks. Now, you selected the topic or selected the reading, and you're going to do it. Now, how are you going to do it? Would you like to do it independently, in pairs, in groups? Which partner would you like to work with? But make sure that they do not always work with the same partner, because it becomes boring and dull after some time. So after decision making, it's time to design their own tasks. The students can read the paragraph. Instead of explaining it to other groups, they can create questions about it and then send these questions to other groups. And then other groups answer these questions and vice versa. So not only choose the context, they can only choose the activities and the tasks that they want to do. Okay. The next stage, as suggested, says encouraging learners to become teachers. This is what we sometimes call it. What? Can you remind me, teachers? What do we call this? Making your students teachers? What do we call this in language teaching now? It's something that starts with F. What is it? Can you write it? Getting your students to be the teachers in the class. It's a very, very common teaching approach nowadays. It is called F. It starts with F, if you can remember. What do you think? No ideas yet? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Nizar, Ms. Warda. Formal. Okay. What other ways? It is flipped. Thank you very much, Mr. Nizar. It's flipped learning. Getting your students to become the teachers. Asking your students to prepare. Tomorrow we are going to do page 9 and 10. So the first student A, you will do the first exercise. You will come here in front of the class, prepare this exercise very quick, very, very well. You will come here, you will conduct it. You're going to be the teacher during this activity. Activity 2, student C and D, or student C only, depending on the type of activity that you can do in your class. Get your students to prepare at home and then come to the class prepared with the material. Okay, so they can choose also which part of the lesson they want to prepare. Okay, again, to give them the choice. The next step is encouraging learners to become researchers. Yeah, in this part, especially with flipped learning, it's very important to empower students with research skills. So you can ask them to collect related vocabulary, for example, pictures for tomorrow's lesson or topic. You can ask them to research how different language teaching sites, explain the present simple or the past simple. Find 3-4 videos that explain the past simple or the present perfect and how can we use it in the future or in the past or in try to get your students to search. Again, modeling in this part is very important, guiding your students to the best websites to search for, because we know that they might encounter some inappropriate ads in some websites. They might encounter some websites which may not be professional. So try to guide them, provide a range of websites, like 10, 15 websites, and tell them you can search here, find the best video or the best activity that would, explain the present continuous, and then come tomorrow and explain it to the class. So you encourage them to become the teachers, and then they need to be the teachers, they need to become researchers. The next part is as a teacher. Okay, after we learned all this from Mr. Noonan, we need to go to a very important part, which is discussed in the panel discussion before the session. What is the teacher's role? So what do you think is your role as in the process of learner autonomy? Again, can you write this in your in the chat box? Could you please write your answers here? What is your role in autonomy? Guides, Mr. Talat, Ms. Warda, Anwar, guide, mentor, what else? Facilitator, thank you very much, Ms. Samreen, Zohra, moderator, yes, Ms. Salma, yes, in making or encouraging enthusiasm, yeah. Any other ideas? Motivator, yes, thank you very much, Iman. Talat says, co-participant in large learning process. Great ideas. Guys, please, your insights are very important. Your ideas are very important. They are actually more important than what I'm saying here. They give the session meaning. Encourage more activities and give more freedom to the students. Exactly. Thank you very much. Facilitator, motivator, scaffolder. All these great ideas are very important for you as a teacher. So as teachers, we need to look at what we are doing in our classrooms. I would tell you that I taught for more than 20 years. I was graduated in 2000. And now it's 2022, so 22 years of teaching experience. And I worked for more than, I would say 6-7 years as a head of professional development. So I was observing teachers, and I was working as an observer for a very long time. And I visited hundreds of teachers in their classrooms. And many of these teachers are not aware of what they actually do. They do things naturally without recognizing that I shouldn't be doing this. Many teachers would stay or spend the whole session in one corner of the class without moving. Some teachers might tend to speak to only a specific group of students and neglect the others. It's unconscious. Teachers are not aware of this. Teachers are not aware of how much time they spend they spend talking, in their session. So you need to record yourself. Watch yourself in an analytical way. Ask a trusted partner or a peer to come to your class and then have a look at what you're doing and then give you a sincere advice, I would say. Because we all make mistakes. We all do things that may not be appropriate to our students' needs. We may all do something that can be improved in a way or another. So this is, a simple form that you can look at: teacher-centered approach and learner-centered approach. You need to find where you are here. I have all the information. I work in the class as I am the only person with the information. I neglect the students' responses, or I listen to everyone's response and I appreciate it. So where you are you in the middle, or you are more towards teacher-centered or a learner-centered approach? Is it my job to transmit knowledge to all the students, or my students I give them more responsibility in the class? Where am I here? Am I responsible for their own learning or no? They are responsible. I give them this responsibility. Is it my job to take all the decisions in the class or no? I can, give them some, or I usually give them some parts to participate in. So you need to consider and think about yourself as a teacher. The next part is the raising awareness. How would you raise your students' awareness? Again, questionnaires, techniques are available online. If you go and search, you will find loads and loads of things that you can use. For example, this is a very simple form that I could find online. You ask student, what kind of student are you? They can answer by very simple words like always, usually, sometimes, hardly ever, or never. And again, it's practice for adverbs of frequency, giving them the opportunity to think of their own learning process. I always do my homework or no, or I sometimes, or I never. I always come to class on time. Give them an opportunity to think of their own performance in the class. I listen carefully, I participate, I give them the opportunity to judge their own performance in the classroom. So they are aware, they are more responsible. And again, these questionnaires are easy and available. Help them identify their preferred learning styles. Again, questionnaires are available online. You can send these to your students, ask them to do online. They can be done in any digital formats where you get students, send them the link, they will fill in the answers, and then they can discover what is their preferred learning styles and preferred learning strategy. Would they prefer to use a dictionary, use grammar books, use video players, use camera, use computer? What kind of strategy is better for them? The next role is, what if your horse is not thirsty at all? What if your students are not motivated? You need to motivate them, as mentioned by our dear colleagues here, is motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is what comes from the students inside, the pleasure of the achievement, the feeling or the pride that they did something, that they gave the correct answer, that they can participate in the group. This is the intrinsic motivation. And the extrinsic motivation would come something that comes from outside. It could come from a parent. It could come from getting the highest grade in the class, or joining the best program, or joining the best university that they would like to. So these are all the different, you need to click these points in your students, make them aware. If you achieve this, you will be here. If you don't, you will be somewhere else. The next part is transferring roles. You need to make, as we mentioned earlier, you work only as a facilitator. You don't need to do everything. So you need to delegate tasks and decisions. Let them decide as much as possible. Let them choose the material they want. The more freedom you give them, the more responsible, and I believe the more better learners they become. The next point is demonstration. As teachers, we tend to give instructions. This is what you need to do, but how? It's your responsibility. No, modeling is very important. Many of our students are not able to provide or to do correct online search. They don't know where to find the suitable or the most suitable information. So you need to provide concrete examples, and this needs to start in the classroom. You can, by providing simple ideas and activities that help your students know what is expected and how they are expected to do it. Help them to think in the target language. Well, I remember as a student learning the language, I studied at Al-Azhar University in Egypt, and I studied in Azharian schools in Egypt as well. So to improve my English, I was always looking at the mirror and talking to myself in the target language, trying to listen to my accent, seeing, I know it might sound crazy for some people, if a family member comes by and sees you doing this, you say, what's up with you? But yeah, it's important. We need to help our students think in the target language, activate their inner voice of the language, get them to think consciously in English, so it moves to the subconscious. You know, the aim for thinking, you know, in the unconscious, you know, I mean, dreaming in the target language sometimes. So you need to encourage your students, I would say, imagination of using the language. Again, choice. So easier. Why most teachers don't give the choice or stick to give the same activities and the same exercises to all students? You know, we have the reasons here. They are easy to mark. You know, we have all the students did the same thing, so it's easy to mark. They can get peer support. The students' progress or abilities can be compared with the group. You can check exactly how each student understood the task. But why not? Why don't we allow them? I mean, if we don't do this, it's more personalized learning. Everyone can choose the activity that they want to do as a homework, or they choose the way they want to do it. Okay, differentiation is also very important in the feedback that you get from your learners. So if you assign a task as a homework, you do not get it all in the same written format. One student will create a PowerPoint presentation, another one will create a video, another one will bring a video online. Some creative students might do a drawing or a cartoon animation, or encourage their creativity. So you will get the same results, but in many different ways. And students would be happy that they present something different to the classmates. And you help foster learning independence. There are loads of examples. For example, here, you can choose one from the activities, answer 3 of these 5 questions, choose one of these topics to answer. You know, very, very simple ways that you can. I'm sorry. Someone is... It seems that Ms. Noah is very enthusiastic, maybe about a different topic. Okay. Now it's time for activities. What types of activities can we use to help us create independent learners? Give students information. The first activity is the inductive, and I get you might know what we mean by inductive. We say deductive learning processes. In inductive learning, we give students the examples, and they need to provide the rule. We give them the general ideas or the details, and we ask them to give the main idea. So this is a very interesting way to make your students responsible, autonomous, and think critically about the topic. So you can give them some information or facts about a city, for example, and let them guess which city is this. Look at, you know, a lesson or a unit and tell them what do you think the picture. Look at the picture and what do you think it's about. Look at the examples of a grammar rule and tell me what is the grammar rule. Discovery, yeah, help them, you know, work independently and discover exercises where you can, where students can receive inputs in the form of a text or a conversation to notice and then figure out how an expression, word, or structure is used. So give them the example, help them find out how it works. Problem solving, provide the problem, get them, you know, to think of ways or different ways to solve the problem. Provide a difficult situation or a riddle, or just provide the beginning or the ending of the story and let them complete it. So, you know, motivate their creativity and encourage them to participate in an untraditional way. Role playing is also important. So you can ask them to design, you know, a pair work of, you know, a person who is a shopkeeper, the other one is the customer, and do not restrict them with a specific context. Let them create their own context. Tell them to choose a story that they can tell or they can act in the class. Then comes the most important question in autonomy. That's I kept it to the end of the session. Can we assess learner autonomy? What do you think? What do you think? I want your insights now. Can we assess learner autonomy? What do you think? Based on what? Why not, Mr. Yeah, I would say why not? Yes, we can assess it. Well, the question is, do we need to? And if we do, how? This is a very important part, and I think there is a lot of controversy around it in the literature. Some researchers said yes, and others said no, and others said it's possible, but how? Little and Noonan and Benson, for example, mentioned that the measurement and therefore the assessment of autonomy is problematic, is difficult, it's challenging, because autonomy is multidimensional construct. We do not know where, if we are asking students to get learning from so many different resources outside the classroom, how can we evaluate these resources? How can we guarantee which resource is the most useful to our learners? Because it's something that was done outside the classroom. We cannot observe it. So this is one idea. Mr. Benson also, agrees or supports the idea more, saying that although we may be able to identify a list of behaviors that demonstrate control over learning, we have very little evidence to suggest that autonomy consists of any particular combination of these behaviors. Yeah, we can decide that our students have done this, but how do we know that autonomy is only based on these, and only these need to be assessed? So again, this is another challenge, what to be assessed. So Mr. Little also mentioned that there are so many different forms depending on age and stage. Our students will not be doing the same thing. Depending on their stage or age or their interests, they might be doing different stuff. So which one can we assess, and how, again, if it's not happening under the control of the educational institution? Benson says or argues that autonomous behavior is essentially self-initiated. So it's something that comes from our students. We don't need to interfere here. We should leave it to our students. And if we can see that they're improving, okay, that's great. We don't need to interfere. We don't need to judge it. While we have another point of view that says autonomy is a capacity in which students may or may not choose to exercise. So if you do not bring it into an assessment program, the majority of students will not see its importance. Yeah, that's another point of view. If we don't measure it, students will not value it. And this is what happens in most institutions. There are marks for everything our students doing. And if they don't do it, they lose marks. So if we don't evaluate it, if we don't give marks for it, students will not do it. Okay. Another idea, Mr. Baud and Ramson says that assessment influences the decisions students make about how as well as what they learn. So assessing autonomy may be essential for its development in an institutional context. So he believes that the decisions that our students are making are very important, not just for the students, it's also for the institution. Based on this, we need to know what these decisions are and how can they contribute in the development of the students and the institution, and then we need to evaluate them. But again, how? The only suggestion, I would say, that could find acceptance in the research field was this idea, is through a portfolio. Christian and Sheffield, from Sheffield University mentioned that most researchers who see that autonomy should be assessed suggested that using portfolio as a mean of assessment. So the only way is to keep a portfolio. It could be an e-portfolio online for your students, showing that they have done all these things. And then teachers can create their own, what we call it, criteria of evaluating it. So as we can see, somebody will say yes, others say no, while the only possible way suggested is through a portfolio. I mean, there is no formal way of assessing autonomy. Now, I came to the end of my session, and I really want to see the most important points. It could be just words that you learned from this session. So what are some of the strategies that you got from today's session that you think can be applied in your classroom? So tell me in points, in bullet points, or could be, you know, I don't need sentences, just statements or phrases of what you think you've learned from this session and what you think is applicable in your classroom. So because we want to make it practical, we want you to grab something out of this session and then go to your class tomorrow or next week and start finding a way of applying it. So what do you think is applicable? Real life learning, Mr. Salat, and outside classroom learning. As a student, no, as a teacher now. As a teacher, what you as a teacher need to do. How can you know, what strategies, what techniques you learned from this session that can be applied in the classroom, or you can make use of to help your students become more independent? Think of the ideas that you got from here. Helping our students, I will give students choice. Thank you very much, Ms. Saba. Yeah, in their assignment. Thank you very much. Leave room for my students to set their goals. Great idea, Ms. Anwar. Activities to make them autonomous. Yes, there are loads of interesting activities that were mentioned here. Share tasks with your students, Mr. Nizar. Exactly. Share them and get them responsible on selecting and maybe designing these tasks as well. So in very brief bullet points, I will mention here the most important parts that you need to take away and focus on in your classroom. So you need to first identify students' styles and strategies. This is something very important. You need to understand what style your learners are and what strategies first fit their needs. The next one is prepare them psychologically and practically. Provide a choice and a voice in everything you are doing in your classroom. Get them or make them responsible. Delegate. Don't keep doing everything in your class. You are not the source of the knowledge. It's the course. It is the internet. There are so many other sources. You are just one example. Okay, reconsider roles. Flipped learning, as we mentioned. Get your students to get out, do something, prepare. Model, provide an example. Okay, motivate your learners. So these are all very important points that you can take from today's session. Ms. Saba says, allow them to explore their learning styles. Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Saba. These are the references for today's session, and it's time for questions and answers. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me in the next 5 minutes. I really appreciate it, Mr. Talat. Actually, your contribution makes it interesting. It's not my presentation. It's the insights that we often get from you. I'll be here for a few minutes. If you have any questions, I'll be more than welcome to answer. If not, I would really, really appreciate your participation, and I would really like to thank all those responsible for the conference, and hopefully, inshallah, I will see you again in the future. Any questions? Any questions before? Yes.
Thank you so much, sir, for the informative and interactive presentation on learners' autonomy in ESL, EFL classrooms. The aspects that you have discussed are indeed crucial for the success of learners. Thanks once again.
I'm sorry again?